everything can get done in the course of 6 months or less, maybe 3 months or less, where the whole dispute is submitted to an AI judge who impartially analyzes the evidence, applies the law to it, is not influenced by prejudice or bias or being hungover or tired or having some personal problems, and makes a decision that everybody lives with. Game over, move on.
My guest today is Paul Goyette, a lawyer and an entrepreneur. In this episode, we cover his background as a young entrepreneur selling pumpkins, how AI is changing the legal field, and a controversial idea on how to completely upend the law field in the future. It's a really exciting conversation, and I enjoyed having it with him. Let me share a little more about his background. Paul Goyette is a seasoned California attorney, entrepreneur, and trial lawyer with over 3 decades of experience. He's the founder and managing partner of Goyette, Rauno, and Thompson, Inc., a full-service law firm with offices in Sacramento, Modesto, Fresno, and Newport Beach. He began his legal career in 1988, and 3 years later, he established his own law firm, which has grown to represent over 125 institutional clients statewide. His practice includes criminal defense, labor, employment, civil litigation, estate planning, personal injury, and license defense. Beyond his legal practice, Goyette is also the founder of RN Guardian and EMS Guardian. These are prepaid legal services for healthcare professionals. If you're a nurse or a paramedic or an EMT and you have some action being taken against you by the powers that be, whether it's your state EMS board or somebody like that, he is somebody who could help you navigate those waters. Now, as far as I know, he's in California, and I believe he has a practice in Texas as well. But if you get into trouble and you need somebody, I would reach out to him and see how he can help. He's also the board member and owner of Primal Quest Inc. If you've not heard of them, they do adventure races, and we talk about it in the podcast. I think you're really going to love this episode. Let's get started. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's great to see you again.
Likewise, Matt. Good to see you, sir.
This is an entrepreneurial podcast, and I have a lawyer on, which is a little bit unusual because I don't know that most people think of lawyers as entrepreneurs.
Because most are not.
Yeah. Most of them are employees for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Before we get into that, you have a bachelor's of science degree in forestry. How did you go? And you grew up on an apple farm, is that right?
Yeah. So, a little bit about me. I grew up in the foothills of El Dorado County, which is in Northern California. And my mom and dad had a ranch, Apple Ranch, which now 2 of my brothers and my sister own. My mom still lives there. She's still around, doing great, 91 years old, but she lives there. And then we bought it and have taken that over and actually converted it all to vineyard. So it's a really fun project. But grew up there and then went to Humboldt State University, the Harvard of the Redwood Empire in far Northern California, and studied forest genetics technically. So I got this genetics background, which is wacky, super interesting. But so I did that. And then kind of funny story, I was going to go into the military. And so I had a couple friends and we were on athletic teams in college. And so a couple of my friends and I decided we were going to go into the military. Like you try to be like a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret or something like that. That was our vision, to do that. And to give and we met with recruiters and we went through the whole process and like, we're going to go to officers candidate school, or maybe we won't go in as officers, going through this whole analysis. And to his credit, my recruiter ultimately is like, dude, you're doing this for all the wrong reasons. Because I was treating it as like, okay, it's a marathon. I'm going to train for this marathon. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get through this. And then boom, I will have accomplished that. He goes, yeah, but then you're going to get through it. And he says, you prepare enough, you probably will. And then you're going to be in this life. And do you want to do it? And my problem was like then and now is like having people telling me what to do ridiculous things, following orders and all that. And I can follow orders, but I'm going to question, wait a minute, why are we doing that? And so to his credit, goes, man, you need to think this through. So I bailed on that idea. One of my friends continued through and he went through the whole process, did 8 years as a Navy SEAL, and then became a special ed teacher. But great story. But then, so I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And one of my professors was a lawyer. He says, why don't you go to law school? He goes, why don't you see if you can do that? Because he was asking me about the military, because I had no real desire to be a lawyer, go to law school. So he says, why don't you see if you can do that if you're trying to see if you can do something? And it's like, okay, sure, I'll do that. And so that's why I did it, just basically see how it went. And it turned out academically, it was a lot less challenging than my undergraduate degree, because my undergraduate degree was a science degree, genetics, and I had to take all these crazy science classes with labs, microbiology, and whole math series up through calculus and all this analytical statistical stuff that was complicated and hard and a lot of work. So I go to law school, I go, whoo, this is a breeze by comparison. It's a totally different kind of thinking. So that's why I did it, just based to see if I could do it.
So what was it about law that you enjoyed, or why did you continue on in that?
Really, it was the business side of it that I always liked. So I always had, even when we were kids, we just had businesses. We're always trying to hustle up money one way or the other. I got in there and met a lot of people I liked. And I said, oh, there's a lot of opportunity here, because I recognized it wasn't just like, oh, go to work for a law firm and grind it out as a lawyer. There's a lot of business opportunity and, just a lot of variables. There's a lot of things I could do with this. I go, okay, this is going to work out for me. So then a friend of mine offered me a job right out of law school because I needed a job, didn't have any money, and worked for him and his wife in Los Angeles for about 3 years. But even then, like from the start, you're just learning. I don't know much about much, but I'm like, oh, we should try this. We should get this client. We should do this, that, and the other thing. And every turn I was being told, no, don't do it. No, we're not going to do that. Maybe probably most of the time it was a good idea. They told me no, but I was always trying to hustle up this or that or the other thing. In fact, one funny story is my boss, Steve Silver, great dude. He one day he was going to sell. He said, I'm selling my car. He goes, I'm just going to turn it in. I go, what are you doing? Don't just trade it in, sell it. You'll get a lot more money. He goes, I don't feel like messing around. They go, tell you what, give it to me. I'll sell it for you and we'll split the proceeds over the trade-in amount. And the trade-in amount, I don't remember the numbers anymore. Well, I remember how much I made off it. So of course I posted some ads. I cleaned it up too, and then posted it, sold it in 2 days for $10,000 more than he was going to get on the trade-in. So he and I split that 10,000. So I remember I made 5,000. He's like, that's the easiest 5,000 you ever made. I go, yeah, but you aren't going to do it. Somebody has to do it. Or, that was just money wasted unless you recognize the opportunity. So I was always looking for that kind of thing. And then, so I stayed there for 3 years and a little less than 3 years, and then moved to Northern California, where I'm from, where I always knew my wife and I wanted to go, and then just opened my own office then. So I go, okay, I'll open my office. I'll see how that goes, and I'll see what other business I can develop along the way.
You said that you grew up kind of around businesses, but was that one of the first times you had ever sold anything and made a profit? So kind of you're dipping your toe?
No? No. Going back, like as a kid, even like a teenager or before, we lived out in the country. So we always were doing things to, make money because, we had a great life. My mom and dad both had good jobs. My dad worked in the concrete cement industry, and my mom was a teacher and then a vice principal. So, we had a great life and everything. But if we wanted to buy a car, if we wanted any extra money, we had to go figure it out. Mom and dad are like, yeah, go figure it out. Plus they made us work on our ranch too. So we're always working out in the heat and the cold, which is a great skill to learn, because later in life I realized, oh, people don't know how to work. I can outwork everybody, no problem. So that was a really important gift. But no, when we were younger, we grew, we had farming projects. We raised animals and sold animals on the side. I had this whole firewood cutting hustle I did with a couple friends of mine, where we cut firewood and sell it. I'll tell you a funny story here. So it really ties in. Initially learned the importance of marketing. Two of my brothers and my best friend at the time, still today, all these years later, still a really good friend of mine. We grew pumpkins. So we talked, our friends, neighbors had a 10-acre field that they weren't doing anything with. So we talked them into, hey, let us grow pumpkins on that property. And we were in like Apple Hill, California, so in the fall, there's this big fall festival that goes on for a couple months. There's a lot of ranches and farms, and people come up there and buy pies and apples and fruit and produce and hang out and go to picnics and buy pumpkins. And so we'll sell them to all the ranches. So, okay, great. Our neighbors were like, yeah, knock yourselves out, kids. And we were like, I think I was 15 at the time. My buddy was 15. My brothers are like 14 and 13. And so we had dads, they had farming equipment. So we just borrowed that. And so we worked on it all winter, all spring, and had this like 10 acres of pumpkins, and everything was looking like it was going good. And then like it starts to get cool in like maybe at night in August or September, and the vines start growing back, and we're like, oh my God, we have tens of thousands of huge, perfect pumpkins. We're like, okay, what are we going to do with all these now? And so we're like, we got a marketing problem. We got a sales problem. And my dad, who was in sales, he's like, hey, you guys got to learn this part of the business too. So we're like, oh, darn. So we're out there hustling, trying to sell these all. And so we had a supply and demand problem. So we had big supply and we were flooding our own market. So it drove the price down, but we were still doing all right. We're selling it. But one particular buyer who had a big ranch bought a lot from us, but he grinded us on price. So ideally we wanted to sell them for like 75 cents a pumpkin, maybe $1. We were selling for 50 cents, but this guy ground us down to 25 cents. And we're like, we're resenting it. So twice a week, so we're going to school and then we're working at night, and and none of us had driver's licenses at the time, but we're still driving trucks around, flatbed trucks. That's just how it was out in the country. Mm-hmm. None of that mattered. And so we would make deliveries to him, and we noticed, we go, his inventory system is not very good, because he just had a ginormous pile out in front of his ranch. And then on like Thursday through Sunday, they'd have hundreds of visitors, and he didn't know what his inventory was. This is really out of line. But what we did is we said, we should hustle down there at night, steal back some of the pumpkins we sold him, and then resell them to him the next day. So we're like, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, so we're idiots. We climb out of the windows in the middle of the night, 2 a.m, drive down there, steal back, maybe 25, 35% of the inventory we sold him, turn around the next day, resell it to him at the same price. He didn't know, he just kept saying, wow, we're really moving this stuff. This stuff is really moving. And it was, he was selling all of it, but he had no idea what his inventory was. So it was hilarious until, of course, our dad caught us climbing back in the window at like 3:30 in the morning, school night. And he's out of his mind, fierce. What the hell are you guys doing? So we had to fess up to it. Fortunately, our father and my buddy's dad did not like this guy at all. So they were like, you guys are idiots. You cannot operate that way. You have to be ethical, honest business people. So he drilled that into us. I'm 15 years old. I go, yeah, what are we thinking? This is stupid. But the lesson we really learned was, one, that you can't go down the gangster path, which was bad. Blame it on the young and stupid. But also it's like marketing. It's like, oh yeah, we need to market this, ahead of time. We need to establish a market. So, we got through that year, and then we did it for 2 or 3 more years after that. By then we had developed all these relationships in grocery stores and other outlets. And so we were able to sell it at a price that was much more favorable. So all of a sudden I learned, like, oh man, that's why marketing is so important. You have to develop these marketing channels and then have sales relationships, and learn that at an early age. The 2 big takeaways there is marketing is huge. It's like the lifeblood of any business. You have to have it, or you're going to have a product or service you'll never sell. And then also, you got to be honest in your business. So that's like one of my number one rules, is you just, because I still think back of that, and I could blame it on being an idiot. Plus it was a big adventure for us too, because we like climbing out of the windows in the middle of the night and driving down there in the dark. And it just was really it was hilarious at the time for us. But both of our fathers, of my buddy and I, impressed on us, like, you guys are idiots. You do not do business that way, because it will catch up on you. Even though this guy is a shyster and very dishonest in his business dealings, that doesn't mean you guys, lower yourself to his level.
Well, I'm glad you learned that at a very young age. I think the other thing is that story is so instructive on so many levels, that you don't have to have the money to start. You borrowed the farm equipment to plant the pumpkin seeds. You borrowed the 10 acres, and then you just started figuring things out, ways to make it work. And I think that's what most entrepreneurs, if you're just getting started, you feel like everything needs to be perfect. But the thing is, once you get moving, you will figure out what you don't know and how you're going to fix it. So
true words have never been spoken. Yeah, we just did it. We go, okay, we don't really know what we're doing, but we're going to do this. And we figured it out. Obviously we had help, but we made enough money. This was always a really good moneymaker for us. And we paid the property owner money at the end of the whole project. And we paid our families their money back, because we were using their equipment and using their fuel. And then we still made, I can't remember the numbers now, but at the time, this was a long time ago, but we had, I don't know, thousands of dollars each of us made for that project. So we always had a bunch of money as kids. So that was always like, okay, now, when I turned 16, I could buy a truck. and we could sock money away, and that helped pay for college later. And
Wow,
so,
that's great.
yeah, cool.
How did you take those lessons? And when you first started your own law firm, how did you use those? And how did you figure out that you needed to work for yourself instead of somebody else?
I wanted to kind of chart my own path, and familiar with, Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan's
Yep.
10x easier than 2x and Be Your Future Self Now. And then I'm really excited to read Ben's new book, Scaling, that's coming out. But it's really the same concept. Is there were always people around that discouraged your ambition, discourage your growth. No, you don't need to do that. I go, well, maybe I don't need to do it, but I want to do it. And well, no, it turns a lot of people off, that kind of thinking. So I'm going, you know what? I got to be in charge of my own operation, whatever that might be. So I can, at least good or bad, win or lose, succeed or fail, it's on me. And I can try things and figure it out, and probably make a lot of mistakes, because that's for sure. I typically learn from those. But, that's why I realized, I want my own businesses, and I want to be in control. Even though I have partners now and stuff, I'm still in control of everything in all my businesses.
Hey, real quick, we're building a community of entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs. These are people just like you who want to start or grow their businesses and are ready to take the next step. If that sounds like something you want to be a part of, sign up and join us today. What were some of the early mistakes that you made?
Well, back to my 15-year-old pumpkin growing experience, which was the early mistake was just being a dishonest business kid. I don't want
How about in the law firm?
Yeah, in the law firm and some of the other businesses is really, I think the biggest mistake that I made early on is giving too much time, attention, energy to less than ideal clients and customers. That if given an opportunity, there are clients out there who will suck the life out of you and don't want to pay you and will underpay you and working below market. And I realized that's just a race to the bottom working with those kind of clients or customers. I think this applies in almost any business. You need to have criteria for, like, okay, who are the ideal clients we want to work with, and focus on those. And then don't spend time and energy in that much bigger percentage. Probably goes back to the 80-20 rule. Don't spend time on that 80%. Spend time on your 20% and grow your 20%.
Have you actually ever sat down and kind of mapped out who your ideal avatar is? Was there ever a formal exercise?
Yeah, for sure. In different ways. When I was by myself, I would map it out by myself. And then I've had different partners along the way and joint venture partners. And we would talk a lot and map out, like, what do we want? What's important? And it changes over the course of time, because there's other variables in place, like what's the cost of acquiring this client? What's the cost of maintaining and keeping them? What's the cost of running the operation? It was one thing when I opened my law firm was 1992, 3. And so, running a business then had cost a lot less, and employees cost a lot less than they do today. So it all kind of changes over time, but it's the same fundamental principles, really.
What legal mistake do you think most entrepreneurs make that could be avoided with better planning?
Well, I would say it's a legal and a strategy mistake. The strategy mistake most entrepreneurs make is they get involved with the wrong people that are dishonest or have a low level of integrity. That's the first thing. They don't do sufficient background check on people So we'll do a deep dive background check on all potential clients and certainly all the employees we hire. And if I am going to have an equity partner on something, I will really get to know them. And it's got to be enthusiastic, yes, or it isn't going to happen. So I think first mistake a lot of partners make, a lot of people make, a lot of entrepreneurs make, is they get involved with the wrong people. They don't understand. They don't know who they're getting involved with. And what track record do these people have? Even if they're honest business people, what's their work ethic? Do they work hard? Most people don't. I'm a fanatical worker, probably to my detriment, but does anybody work as hard as me? Never. But do they work hard enough? Sometimes yes, but not so much, So what's their work ethic? Do you want to get involved with somebody with a lesser work ethic? I've got rid of business partners just because they don't work that hard. And what's their track record? What have they accomplished in the past? And then also big ticket items is like, what's what I call their ethical history? Like we'll see, have they been sued? Are they out there suing people? Do there are any fraud allegations against them? Anything dishonest that shows a lack of integrity? If those red flags come up, then it's a hard stop with that person. So I think that's the first thing. And then the legal mistake people make is they do deals on a handshake. It's like, get a contract in place for God's sakes, get a contract in place and spell out what the relationship is, spell out who's responsible to do what, spell out the monetary terms, and then in a contract have like an exit clause. What happens when this relationship is going to end or we want it to end? So spell that out in a contract. It's not hard to do. And in today's world, we could all do it. You don't need a lawyer to do it. You can have a lawyer review it, but you can chat GPT it and put together a great agreement, and ChatGPT will give you all the provisions you need and have a solid agreement with people. So you have a document. But I am always amazed, like in the law firm, we have a business and corporate transactional department. We have all these clients who do these deals or get into these relationships on a handshake. And then, of course, nobody remembers, what the deal was, and they disagree, or they have a weak contradictory agreement, or they have a contract, even worse, they sign something, they don't really read it or understand it. Oh, now you're stuck with this, man. Now we gotta find our way through that. So that would be the two big things: is really know the people you're getting involved with. I mean, I really know them, and be careful about that. And then have good contracts.
That's really great advice. You mentioned AI. Let's talk a little bit about that. How do you see AI changing the legal field in the next 5 to 10 years?
Hugely. We use it every day. And it's developing, as you know, it's developing very, very quickly. So every week or month, its capabilities expand. So the legal profession is a lot of legal research and writing and document production. And AI has exponentially changed that already. So where it used to be law firms would have big groups of associates and paralegals grinding 12 hours a day doing research and writing. Now that those tasks can be done in a fraction of the time with a fraction of the people. Yeah, we use a number of good programs right now that have really accelerated learning curves and help. So it's going to have a big impact. Some people argue that it could put paralegals and legal law associates out of business, the need for them, and probably true. Also lawyers are terrible business people. Usually, most professionals are. Lawyers are not generally entrepreneurial. Some are, but most aren't. They're not great business people. They're kind of like doctors, professionals, because they're usually very smart, successful people. Lawyers are also smarter than everyone else and the reason you know that is because they'll tell you. It's maddening. So they're slow to change, slow to learn, slow to adapt, slow to innovate. And so I think a lot of law firms are going to have to downsize significantly, or other competitors are going to come up and force them out of the office. And if I'm a big company or a small company, am I going to pay lawyers tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to do work now? A lot of work that if I have a tech savvy assistant, can do half of it on our own. So there's a lot happening. We have some great programs we're using. We use ChatGPT. I use Claude, also use Grok a lot, but then we have a legal research program called LexisNexis that people probably heard of. It has an AI component that's fabulous. It used to be when we had libraries and books back in the day, and there was a lot of work really drilling down on, okay, what's the current state of the law in these different jurisdictions? And now it's, just a few keyboard taps away and boom, it's all there. And the beauty of like a lot of these large language models now is they're way more accurate than they used to be even a year ago. So they're up to date. And now you have to, in a legal setting, you have to, especially like case citations and statutes, and you need to go back and you need to independently verify this information. But in terms of getting started, it's the hugest time saver in the world.
It's going to save you probably 80 or 90% of your time. And then you just go and verify, which is a much easier task because you're not having to filter everything out.
Yeah. And it really ties in with everything else I love, but that whole 80-20 principles, get rid of that 80%. And so if I can get rid of 80% of that grunt work that was tedious but needs to be done through a technology leverage like this, then you can focus on that 20% and grow that 20%.
Absolutely. Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has a great cash flow quadrant, ESBI. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I've heard it.
Yeah. And so like you're saying, the E quadrant is employees, S quadrant is self-employed, and that includes doctors and lawyers. The B quadrant are business owners, and the I quadrant are investors. I also add a P quadrant for philanthropy. So I think of it like a staircase. So you managed to go from the S quadrant to the B quadrant. What advice do you have for maybe a lawyer who's interested in going into law with all the changes in AI, and how do they take, or maybe somebody who already they're working for a law firm, how do you go from S to B and become an entrepreneur? Because this is not the only business that you've owned.
Oh no, I have a bunch of others too. In fact, that's what I'm more excited about now than anything is some of the other ones. But what I would tell people is improve your capabilities. First of all, you have to improve your capabilities, but even before that, you have to have a mindset that you're going to do it, that you want to do it. So you have to set a goal, that might seem impossible at the time to you. Oh, I'm going to open up my own business. I'm going to open up my own law firm, but I don't really know how to do it. It might be impossible to you, but you need to set that goal. And then you need to commit to it. That's the biggest thing. You can't just have this kind of theoretical thing floating around out there that you're blah, 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 blah. I'm going to try this, try that, but it'll never happen. It will never happen. So you have to commit to that goal, which means getting rid of other things. Okay, I'm going to commit to this. I really do want this, which means some things and people are going to have to get left behind, which is hard to do. That's really hard to do. It's because you're comfortable. It may be annoying, but you're comfortable in that. And people inherently do not like change. So what I'd say is, okay, what you need to do if you really want to do this, you need to set what might appear to be an impossible goal, and you need to commit to it. And that's all a mental thing. That's really all a mindset thing, and commit to that mindset. And then things will open up for you. You create space in your life, you'll create time, opportunities will come your way, but you need to improve your capabilities too. So if you're a new lawyer, I would drill down on, and I do this all the time, and I have a long way to go. It's like, I want to know as much about artificial intelligence and its applications as possible. I want to know what the options are. I don't necessarily want to be the tech guy who's in the office pounding out code. That's not going to be me. But I want to know what's out there and how do we use it. And if I need to find the right person to join my team to operate that system, that's fine. But I want to know what the options are and how we can leverage it and how we can leverage it further and further. So really, I think you need to pick a goal, commit to it, and really commit to it. Not theoretically, hypothetically commit to it, but commit to it with a capital C. And then constantly work on improving your capabilities. And also, don't be afraid. And don't listen to all the naysayers out there. Cut those naysayers out of your life. The old people say, you don't need to do that. You can't do that. You won't be able to do that. That's going to be hard. Well, yeah, no shit, it's going to be hard. That's why I'm doing it. And in fact, for me, if it's uncomfortable, if I feel like, oh, this is going to be tough, this is going to be a steep hill to climb, then I'm just so conditioned. Okay, I'm going to do it just because I know the path. The obstacle is the path instead of avoiding it. And I don't want to do that. That's going to be hard. That's going to hurt. That's going to be uncomfortable. Well, that's all the signs like, oh, I got to do it.
Absolutely. I have a philosophy that if it scares me, I run toward it. I
Exactly.
run toward the things that scare me, or I do the things that make me nervous. And sometimes it's as simple as clicking submit on, signing up for a class or signing up for a race or something like that. Speaking of which, you were really involved with Primal Quest and some of the great big adventure races. Talk a little bit about that. And did you use the same framework that you use in business to achieve the end goal for those races?
Yeah, exactly. For sure. So Primal Quest and it's expedition adventure racing, which is a very obscure but transformative sport in my view, where it's a team event where in the big races, the expedition races, we'd be in teams of 4 people and they were co-ed teams. So usually had one woman at least. Our teams usually had one woman who was almost always the strongest member of our team, by the way. You travel from a starting line to a finish line that's usually hundreds of miles, maybe 300, 400, 500, 600 miles through wilderness terrain. And then the race is broken up into sections. So your team always stays together. You move around the clock. You don't stop. You kind of manage your own sleep schedule. We'd sleep an hour. At the start of the race, we'd sleep 1 hour every 24 hours. And then we'd kind of try to sleep 2 or 3 as the race went on because the wheels start coming off if you don't. And you have to navigate through a series of checkpoints by old school map and compass, no GPS, no cell phones. So it's, reading terrain, map and compass. And if you don't hit a checkpoint, you got to go back and get it. And you got to carry your food, your water. They have certain mandatory gear in terms of clothing and safety you have to have. And then there'd be sections of the race. So a lot of them would be on foot. There'd be big mountain bike sections. There'd be water sections where we would kayak, whitewater raft, open water paddle, riverboard down a river, something like that. There'd be a lot of rope sections. So we'd always be climbing, rappelling, traversing with ropes, sometimes with your bike. So you'd have to climb a 200-foot face with your bike, get it up the or rappel with your bike or do a Tyrolean traverse with your bike. We had to do a lot of that. Occasionally a race had horse sections where one or all of us had to get on some damn horse and, ride. And those were always the worst. But what I had to do, initially when I found out about this, I was on the crew in college and I did triathlons for years. So I was doing a lot of athletic things. And then I mountain biked and skied and did a lot of outdoor things. Still do. And then I heard about it, expedition adventure racing. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I want to do this. But I don't know how to do a lot of things. I didn't know how to climb. I have kind of this underlying fear of heights, which I had to figure out how to deal with that, which was sketchy. I didn't know how to kayak. There's a lot of things I didn't know how to do. I wasn't a very good mountain biker. I could run all day long, but, and I could suffer with the best of them, which is a helpful tool, but I didn't know how to navigate. It's like, oh, God, how do we use a map and compass? I kind of knew how to do it, but you don't really know how to do it. So there's all these new things I had to learn. And then there's a team setting. So you had to form a team, and it's like boils down the essence of running a team at its purest form, because it's very, very stressful, because you're going without food, you're going without water, you're very tired all the time. It's cold, it's hot, you're suffering, it's scary, it's exhilarating, then it's scary, then it's the ups and downs. So you got to manage this team. So I was always most of the time I was the team captain. I would assemble the team, the racers. I have all these friends from around the world where we assemble these teams. And so it's picking the right people. How do you navigate these teams? Who's in charge? How do you manage decision making? And so it was this big learning curve. Like at the start of it, when I said, I'm going to do this, I didn't know how the hell I was going to do it. I got to learn. So then I figured out, like, once I committed to it, then all of a sudden I started learning how to do things. So, I go to the climbing gym and I took a bunch of lessons, and I got climbing with people, and I go, oh, I can do this. And I actually read a lot about how to overcome fears of heights, because we did some huge climbs. Like we did 1,000-foot climbs. We did 600-foot rappels at night, really crazy. And previously I had to figure out how to not just completely freeze up from my fear of heights. So I was able to kind of manage that, figure that out, how to do that. So it's all those things, learning those capabilities, and then how to deal with a team and how to manage people, and how, there's a time to like yell at people, but there's a lot of times, most of the time, it's the time to listen. How do you keep everybody cohesive, even though like sometimes, and I got really super close with your teammates, but sometimes my teammates hated each other by the end of it because they're just suffering. And so how do you manage that? And so it's just like running any business. It's like you have to learn how to do all these things. And then too, you have to just persevere, because there's times where it just sucked. It's 3 a.m. It's 38 degrees and dumping rain. You're soaked to the bone. You're freezing. Oh, we're out of food too. Damn, haven't slept in a day and a half. And we got to keep going. And it's too cold to stop. You can't stop, and so you just have to say, look, it's time to just suck it up, and we need to soldier up here and keep going. And so it's all those things have really helped me. Like my previous business experience helped me with adventure racing, and then adventure racing has helped me with, all my other business ventures.
I love how you took the time to learn all the skills. What would you say the top 3 skills an entrepreneur needs to master to be really good? And you mentioned AI, and I heard somebody say recently that if you, especially if you're 50 plus and you're not learning AI every day, you're probably about to be extinct. So other than AI, what other skills do you think people need to be successful?
AI is huge. I would say fundamentally, and with lawyers in particular, develop a skill on listening. Learn how to listen. Make yourself listen. And shut up, for God's sakes. Close your mouth and listen. Sit back, listen, and think. That would be a skill that I've noticed in the legal profession. I've been in meetings and Zoom calls. It's like, oh my God, everybody's talking over each other. Nobody's listening and really analyzing what the issue is, because this is easily resolvable if you would freaking listen. So basic fundamental things like that is listening, human interaction, how to work with people, how to work in teams, how to manage people. These are basic skills people have to know, but I'm always amazed how poorly people handle those kind of things. So that's more human, fundamental things. I think, as you mentioned, artificial intelligence is massive. So you have to master that technology. And I think you have to, try to look around what's around the corner, look in the future as to, okay, what's happening in industry as a whole and what's happening in our industry, and try to anticipate where you can provide value. And I think that's one of the cornerstones I always try to instill on my employees is think about, to use the Joe Pollard book title, is, what's in it for them? How do you help these people? I mean, that resonates with everyone. It's like, look, how can I help you? In fact, you asked me that very question like 40 minutes ago. And it's a great starting point. I appreciate that, Matt, a lot, because, how can you provide value to people? How can you help? It's not about, for lawyers, it's not about your billable hours or your rate, or, you can get to all those technical details, retainers, deposits, procedure, all of that. But back up a step, how can I help you? What can I do? What are you trying to accomplish here? And to give you like an example, just this week, I had a conversation with a potential client who's in a business dispute and wants to go nuclear and file lawsuits. And we have a litigation department here, so I would turn it over to them. But, I had to say, look, I got to tell you, honestly, you're not going to be happy at the end of the day, because this is a very expensive procedure that we're going to go through. And it's going to be very taxing on your time and your emotions. And there's not enough at stake. If you're going to do this as a matter of pride or principle, I guarantee you we'll get to the end of this and you're going to not be happy and you're going to be mad at us. And sure, you pay us a lot of money along the way. That might be good for our balance sheet, but it's not providing you value. And she's like argued with me a little bit more. And then we spoke a couple hours later and she's like, oh God, I thought about it and talked to my husband, her partner, the business. I'm glad you really pointed it out. I go, yeah, let's try an alternative strategy here and don't go down this path. And so that's really, I think, what you need to look at. I mean, there's so many lawyers and law firms that would just immediately say, yeah, sign her up, get that $25,000 retainer and let's go. But at the end of the day, what value are you providing? You billing her and making money is not providing her value. It's not helping the client. And so we're going to do some other things with her, but now she and I are tight. I mean, and she, trusts me and it's a good relationship. And I think we can we'll smooth the whole thing over and get it resolved fairly efficiently for her.
I think that's great. I think that helps establish that trust, and you're helping her solve a problem. And it wasn't the way that she wanted the problem solved, but it sounds like in the end, you're going to be able to do that. You mentioned a couple things, AI and law, and Steve Jobs was brilliant. And one of the things he was brilliant at is taking two things, a line here and a line here, and then intersecting them. And he knew art and he knew a little bit about computers. And so he crossed them and he made a major new industry. I think in the future that you're going to see AI and law come together into something that we've never seen before. And it might be AI law, right? Like if I write something and ChatGPT developed it for me, well, who owns that? Do I own it? What if I compile a bunch of PDFs of different authors and then I write something? Who gets that copyright? So I think there's questions and that we haven't even seen before that AI is going to open a whole new field for lawyers.
Yeah. Well, how about this? This is what I've been thinking of, because the court system, there's a state court system and a federal court system, and both court systems, state courts in particular, depending where you are very antiquated. They are ripe for disruption. Civil cases in particular, but a lot of criminal cases too, take years to run their course. It's insane how much slow bureaucracy is involved. And you have a civil dispute with someone and it takes you 5 years to get that resolved, or sometimes longer. That doesn't work for anyone. So one thing I'm thinking there, a solution would be like an AI driven arbitration or judicial process where everything gets done in the court. Everything can get done in the course of 6 months or less, maybe 3 months or less, where the whole dispute is submitted, mostly probably in writing, but there could be an argument phase of it, and there could be an evidence phase where some witnesses testify under oath, is submitted to an AI judge who impartially analyzes the evidence, applies the law to it, is not influenced by prejudice or bias or being hungover or tired or having some personal problems, and makes a decision that everybody lives with. Game over, move on. So there's that kind of the system. Oh, and I'd be 1,000% behind that. There's a business in that too, for sure. But
there's a huge business in that. And I even see the old English barristers with the wigs. Yeah. I could see like on my teleprompter here, the little wig over it. And this is your barrister. And you come in and here's my case and here's your case. And we're sitting on opposite ends of the country and we're doing arbitration. But yeah, that to me is the next big spinoff. And you start having people, when they sign an agreement, it's now we agree to AI arbitration. That would solve a lot of problems and clear up a lot of cases. So there's your next spinoff.
And from a business standpoint, from a corporate and business operations standpoint, businesses need to get things done. and being bogged down in some ridiculous litigation that costs a fortune for years is so unproductive. But what you're going to see happen is the system, and we see this in all disruptive entrepreneurial ventures, the system will fight you. The system does not want to change.
No.
There's a whole industry out there of judges and courtroom clerks and bailiffs and whatnot that are making money off this existing antiquated system, and they will fight you tooth and nail. And then there's like regulatory agencies, the bane of all of our existence. But, like the state bars will fight you because they'll say, well, there's ethical reasons that, they're just trying to justify their own existence. Is that a reason to not do it? Hell no. It's a reason to do it, is push through it. But you're right, Matt, that is really going to be the future at some point where, you and I have a business dispute. It doesn't need to be personal. We'll submit it. We'll submit both sides of it to our AI courtroom, our AI judge, and we get a decision. Win, lose, or draw, you're done in short order, and you move ahead.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a really good business. I think it could do very well. I like to say that for every goal, there's a goalie, and it doesn't matter whether you're like our students are going to paramedic school, if you start a business, if you try and save money, whatever it is, somebody's going to push back. It's forces up equals forces down, forces left equal forces right, if we're talking physics terms. So yeah, go ahead and try and change the legal arena and see what happens. But that's okay. It's a battle that I think could be very valuable. I know.
Well, it's inevitable, right? I mean, all these things are, it's like if we don't do it, somebody's going to do it eventually.
Yep. Buckminster Fuller was a futurist. He's best known for the Buckyball and the Epcot Center. And he said that everything will eventually come down to a point. Pretty soon you'll be able to do everything with nothing. And I think our cell phones are the perfect example of that. And so when you decrease the complexity in anything, it's a win. And so if you can decrease the complexity in the legal arena, you're going to win as well. I know that we're getting almost to the end of our time here, and I've talked more probably about law than the entrepreneurial thing. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Or if not, if you don't have anything, then I have another question for you.
I mean, the way I look at things, and honestly, Matt, in the legal industry, I look at things different than almost everyone else out there. Everyone else are very incremental, to use Ben Hardy's term, 2x growth oriented, which is oftentimes negative 2x growth oriented. I always try to look at opportunity. In fact, I'm going through this right now, big time. Let's go through that, take another hour podcast to describe it. But it's really, how to 10x myself in all areas of my life. And that means the hard part that I'm going through right now, that means letting go of things you are comfortable with that are no longer really serving you. And that's not just projects, cases, clients, it's people, too. And that's super uncomfortable. So like you and I've talked about before, that's uncomfortable, I'm going to do it. And so my observation in the legal industry has been that is a rare vein of thinking. There are a few lawyers in Genius Network, and like Robert Govia, for one, who has a very popular YouTube streaming channel, and that he has reinvented himself over the years from being like a traditional lawyer into doing that. So there are lawyers out there that think this way, but not many. Not many.
No. One of my favorite books on the subject is 2 Second Lean by Paul Akers. And what Paul describes is how in a business we start accumulating inventory and all this extra stuff. And he uses like the Toyota production system and starts leaning, like, get rid of this stuff, right? If there's stuff taking up space in your mind or your house or whatever, you can get rid of that. And so I think that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Paul, if people want to get in touch with you or find out more about what you do and what you're involved in, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, like, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can look at my law firm website is GRT, WWWG, as in my last name, Goyette, R as in Randy, T as in Tom, law.com, grtlaw.com. I'm on LinkedIn, my full name, and then my email address is super easy. I have one email address. My law firm email address I do everything with is paul@grtlaw.com. But, happy to chat with anybody who needs help.
That's great. And the final question, if you could go back and visit your 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
I would tell my 18-year-old self to not worry as much. I would tell my 18-year-old self, just be confident that things are going to work out just fine. Because looking back over the years, there's been quite a few between now and my 18-year-old self, I remember times where I'm doing different things. I'm doing a lot of uncomfortable things. But, I fretted about it. Oh, no, what if this doesn't happen? What if that doesn't happen? What if the what ifs? And of course, none of those horrific what ifs happened. There were some things I had to work through. A lot of things didn't work out the way they were supposed to. But I tell my 18-year-old self, just look, be confident. Just be confident and enjoy the journey more, which I've been able to do a lot more in recent years. It was a lot harder when I just didn't have the perspective, being a teenager and even in your 20s, you just don't know. You don't have that perspective. So if I could go back and coach my 18-year-old self up, I'd say be more confident and relax.
Absolutely. We all want a straight path, but there's no straight paths in the universe. I'm sure on those adventure races, you tried to go this way and something went the other way. Business is no
literally many times for whatever reason. Yeah. You think this is the path we're going to take. This is the plan. No, didn't work out that way at all. But, there's also the other thing I would tell my 18-year-old self is you think you have a path, you think you have a plan, and it may not work out. In fact, it probably won't work out exactly as you think, but there's going to be byproducts that come out of those efforts that are going to prove to be way better than anything you were planning for. So that really ties into my thinking on, committing to that impossible goal. I've done that a few times over the years, and it's like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to figure it out. And then all of a sudden you start figuring out, but some byproduct comes up that far exceeds anything you were ever anticipating.
Absolutely. Buckminster Fuller also talks about the processionary effect, which is a big word for basically as we move forward, there's kind of a ripple behind us and we can't always predict what that's going to be. And it's kind of like a bumblebee that goes to this plant and this plant and this plant. It doesn't really know what the purpose is, but as it does, it pollinates the world. And so we kind of touch different things as we're building businesses, and eventually really, really good things happen. So anyway, Paul, I know you've got another meeting to go to. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate having you on the podcast.
Yeah, this is fun. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. And let me know how I can be of help to you more in the future. And I'll see you soon.
All right. Sounds great. Till next time.
Thank you very much.
Want more? Click below for extra resources in our podcast vault. We have show summaries, action plans, and information about coaching.